So we all know if you want to compete, you need to go and buy the most expensive hardware imaginable. Now, if you're poor and you're still on a 10900K, should your poor ass even consider buying a 4090? For anyone new to the channel, we do a lot of sarcasm and satire here. So the last time we talked about the 10900K might have been like a couple of years ago now. And back then, I was saying that the 10900K is basically the new Sandy Bridge, like the 2600K, where that thing is gonna last at least 6 years. So the 10900K launched on April 30th, 2020. So about 3 years exactly by now. So this is kind of the halfway point. Now, foreshadowing a little bit, I do believe this CPU will last even longer than that. Now, this video came up because we have a lot of 10900K owners in the comment section that actually have bottleneck anxiety, if you will. Should they buy a 4090 knowing that they might not extract the maximum value out of it? So that's basically the goal of today's video. If you own a 10900K and you got some nice memory, some B-die, and you tune it up, can that CPU stretch the 4090's legs? Or is the 4090 so fast that the 10900K is just a poor person's CPU now? So here's what we're gonna do for this video. I'm not gonna do like a 10900K versus 13900K standard type of benchmark. No. We want to laser focus on the bottleneck aspect of it. So how we're going to do that, I'm going to benchmark a bunch of games that are known to be CPU bound. We're going to do it in 1080p, 1440p, and 4K. And then what we're going to look at is to see the GPU usage at all three resolutions. And then the way you can tell if it's a bottleneck, if that GPU is not being used at 99 or 100%, your CPU is too slow to utilize it. So the test setup today is very mild. I didn't go balls out with the overclock and make it a very unrealistic video. This is all very realistic. The test bench is a NZXT H1 just because I had an ITX board with the 10900K. The 10900K is overclocked to 5.2 gigahertz all core, and the memory is overclocked to 4400 C17. So this is something that all 10900Ks can achieve. No suicide voltages, no crazy nonsense. Just a standard 140 millimeter AIO cooling the whole thing. You're gonna see the temperature and the power draw of the CPU a little bit later in the video. So I'll talk more as we go into the benchmarks here, but this video was brought to you by the supporters of the channel. All content on this channel is supporter backed. No sponsorships, no product samples, nothing for free, only journalistic integrity. So if you want to support the vision we have here at Frame Chasers, head to the website framechasers.org, become a supporter, get access to the Discord with the best community on the internet, and get access to hours and hours of previous stream VOD content. All right, let's go upstairs, plug in this bad boy, and then let's go run some benchmarks and see if the 10900K can keep up with the 4090. Okay, so here is the theoretical ghetto-ass setup that I got going on here. It's just a 4090 that's sticking outside of an H1 case, but the CPU itself is just being cooled by the 140 millimeter AIO, and then the riser cable, and then 2x16 B-die here, dual rank, and a Z690, Z590i Unify actually. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Nothing special. So the benchmarks are the bottlenecking benchmarks that you see today are basically, we're showing the 10900K in the worst case scenario if you think about it. Okay, before we get into the numbers here, I'm just going to show you guys the IDA64 screenshot of the test system here. Like I was saying earlier, 5.2, 4.7 on the ring, and 4400 on the memory. Nothing crazy here, nothing out of the ordinary. 37 nanoseconds on the latency. Achievable by all 10900Ks. A very, very mild overclock for this video. Okay, so the first graph, we're going to go with Shadow of the Tomb Raider, obviously. And then here you can see a little bit of a CPU bottleneck on 1080p and 1440p. Now, the other perspective here is you are getting 250 FPS. So if you're playing on like a 144, 175, or 240 hertz monitor, you're not really going to care that your CPU bottlenecked here. In fact, this was on high settings, so what you could do is you could just crank it to ultra settings anyway, put more of a load on that GPU, and not worry about it. And of course, if you're playing in 4K, you don't gotta worry about any of this. You're gonna saturate the card just fine in 4K. Last of Us is up next. Now, this game actually hit the CPU the hardest out of all the benchmarks that we have today. Also, I'll show you a screenshot in a second here of the actual power usage, but it was absolutely insane. This game by far hits the hardest on the CPU. Now, you're going to encounter a little bit of a bottleneck at 1080p and 1440p here, just like you did in Tomb Raider, but if you're playing in 4K, you're still going to saturate that 4090 at 100%. Also, I forgot to mention, the green bar is average FPS, the orange bar is GPU usage, so how much bottleneck you're actually encountering. So here's the screenshot that I was talking about in The Last of Us on my test bench here. The CPU, the 10900K, is pulling 180 watts in 1080p to just get 110 FPS. This game is absolutely insane on the CPU. We're only using 60% GPU usage in this screenshot, and we're doing it with 180. So basically, the CPU is almost pulling as much power as the graphics card. Yeah, this game is quite special when it comes to CPU benchmarks. Jedi Survivor is up next. Now, I believe that this game actually had some optimization / patches. I was just benchmarking this 2 days ago, so this is the most current up-to-date version. So I believe that's why we're seeing such high GPU usage at such low resolutions here, right? This was not the case on launch. But regardless, I mean, post-launch patches here, you're actually saturating the graphics card in 1440p now, so high settings as well. No ray tracing, no DLSS, none of that kind of stuff, right? So, once again, you are laughing if you are a 10900K owner. No problems. All right, SpiderMan Ray Tracing high settings up next. Now, this one I wanted to try because this one we know does scale with DDR5, right? Or what I want to say is it scales with memory bandwidth, not so much the generation of the memory. Now, this one, we do see a CPU bottleneck in 1080p and 1440p, and actually a little bit in 4K as well. Now, if you actually go back and check the 13900K DDR5 numbers, these numbers are only about 15 FPS below a 13900K, which actually ends up being 13%. So the difference between this CPU in this configuration and a 13900K at DDR5 8000 is only 13% FPS. So that's how far we've come in SpiderMan Ray Tracing. But you want to compete and not be poor, right? Okay, Flight Simulator up next. Now, this one again, we can utilize that graphics card at 100% in 4K. Now, the lower resolutions there, this was also native. I didn't use DLSS 3 frame generation or anything. So I suppose if 130 FPS was not enough frame rate for you, you could generate some fake frames. Personally, I hate the way it looks. I don't do it. So, but that's up to you. The idea behind frame generation is for people with slower CPUs, you can get more frame rate by, yeah, basically injecting fake frames. But 130 FPS for a game like Flight Sim is more than enough to enjoy that game. All right, Redfall is up next. I know nobody cares about this game, but I already had it installed and I wanted to do another game. So this one, again, saturates the graphics card in 4K. And I mean, I don't know why people were saying this game is unoptimized. This 10900K is totally slaying this game, no problem. But yeah, we're seeing about a 20% bottleneck here in 1440p. But again, this is high settings. You can always just crank it up to ultra. if seeing that 80% bothers you. Not like playing this game at more than 240 FPS is gonna matter anyway. Overwatch 2, and yeah, this was pretty pointless. So, I mean, if you want 520 FPS and 4K, but I mean, if you have a 10900K, you are hitting that frame cap, no problem whatsoever. You're still competing at the highest levels with a 10900K in this game. Okay, Warzone is up next. Now, I just dropped here. It's not my usual spot because for some reason on that other side of the map, there was a bunch of fog and lightning and stuff. I don't know what's going on, so that would have skewed and changed all the results from my normal benchmark. But anyway, long story short, we're around 180 FPS. Now, here's the topic of debate here, right? 180 FPS in this game is higher than like 99.9% of Warzone players. I would also say that if you're playing in the World Series of Warzone or for like tens of thousands of dollars, you could be at a disadvantage over newer platforms. I mean, Warzone is such a unique case, and it always has been on this channel. That's why people literally build entire brand new rigs just to play this game, right? So yeah, with the 10900K, you're more than fine in every single game and every single resolution, etc. The only exception, which is obviously always the only exception, is going to be Warzone. What were we getting there? 180 to 200 FPS? If you have a 13900K with DDR5 8000, you can get about 230 to 250, right? So that's a difference of about 25 to 30% is what you're behind right now. Only in that game, though. If you take a game like SpiderMan with Ray Tracing, you're only 15 FPS behind. And then if you're playing any other esports game aside from Warzone, you're going to hit the frame cap anyway. So then basically, unless you're playing Warzone and you're playing in tournaments for real money, like large sums of money, don't worry about it. Now, if you are a Warzone player that's playing for real money, I sell DDR5 tuned 8000 kits on my website as well. Guaranteed to have the most frames, never dev error, and never crash. Just the other day, my boy Apathy won a huge solo tournament. For those of you with deep pockets that want to compete. So boys, if you own a 10900K and you are poor and you can't afford to buy a new one, at least you know that you made the best CPU investment you could have for the next 10 years. And if you like the content, hit that subscribe button, do all that YouTube SEO stuff, like, share, subscribe, comment down below if you still have a 10900K and if you're still gaming on it. And I will see you guys in the next one. Go enjoy another 7 years of that 10900K, baby. See you later.